Hello everybody and welcome back. Today I would like to talk about Guild Wars 2 and 5 things I think it does very well or are unique to it, and that someone coming from another MMO that might have had some issues recently and is looking for newer pastures might want to get into, or someone who's completely new to MMOs would like to get an introduction into. As a note, the Guild Wars 2 base game is completely free to download, and that gets you the entire story of the original game without any restrictions on completing it. I think there are a few trade and inventory restrictions, but it's still perfectly doable. And then there are 2 expansions out which you can buy to get a sort of upgrade. It's buy to play, there is no monthly subscription, so it's very easy to get to in that respect. Now without any further ado, let's get into the first point. Number 1. Little to no gear grind. Gear in Guild Wars 2 works a little differently. In Guild Wars 2, gear of the same rarity has the same total stats. They can come in different distributions depending on what the gear type you're going for is, but they are all roughly equivalent to each other. What this means is that a piece of rare gear you get dropped in a dungeon, in the open world, doing a high-end raid, or just goofing around with some friends, killing bandits, it all has the same gear total, and it's all comparable, which makes it quite easy to gear up. So in the game, there are several rarities. Start from junk, basic, fine, masterwork, rare, exotic, ascended, and legendary. With the exception of legendary, each of these comes with a stat total increase, which is currently being displayed on the screen. So Ascended is the highest stat-wise, and Legendary is also identical stats to Ascended. To get exotic gear, the second one down, and which is you can complete any piece of content wearing exotic gear, takes about 5 minutes, and on the trading post, which is the in-game player market, you can buy a full set of Ascended armor for under 5 gold, depending on the stats, which makes it very easy to gear up to a workable level. Ascended takes a bit longer, assuming it takes you a week to level up to 80, which is perfectly doable depending what content you're doing. Ascended would take you a full month or so to grind out. It depends which content you do, and I will probably make a guide on gearing up effectively to Ascended. That's without grinding content repetitively or going through purely gold methods, although that is unavoidable for some of the armor pieces. So what is Legendary then? If it doesn't come with any stat improvements, why would you bother with it? So Legendary gear comes with several benefits over Ascended, and Legendary gear takes months. This is, if you want endgame grind, this is your itch scratched. Legendary gear, firstly, comes with the benefit of being able to choose any stat combination. That's any stat combination currently in the game and any stat combination that will be in the game in future. Another benefit is the ability to swap out any runes or infusions that you have equipped on a legendary item without destroying them. Typically, these are destroyed when you attempt to remove them, or you need to use a special, somewhat expensive item to retrieve them. This is not the case in Legendary. You can pull them in and out as wanted. One of the largest and newest benefits to owning a legendary item is that it is now available to every character on your account for every single equipment tab. What this means is, if you craft one legendary staff, every character on your account never needs to craft another staff again. They all have access to the legendary at the same time, and they can have it on each of their account tabs. Each of these tabs allows you to put different stat selections and equip different builds for different content if you want. So that's especially handy in that respect. This also means that if you eventually get a character to full legendary gear, you have essentially completed the gearing system. You never have to interact with it again. You have instant access to everything for every character on your account. The one thing I will note is that the armor pieces are locked to weight class, so If you craft a full set of legendary armor, the characters of that weight class have access to it, but if you have a light armor character and a heavy armor character, you would need to get a separate one for the heavy armor character. This does not apply to the weapons or the back pieces or accessories. Reason number 2, a new way of questing. So Guild Wars 2 does not have a traditional quest log. You won't find a town, load up on every single quest, run around on a rampage, massacring the entire boar population, and then move on to the next place. Instead, you'll interact with the world in 3 separate ways. The first of these are hearts. You can see here an empty heart. I don't need to talk to this NPC. You can see in the top right hand corner that just because I've walked into the area, the quest equivalent is automatically visible. And from this are a range of objectives. So this is roughly equivalent to the, say, kill 10 boars, pick 5 flowers, help this old lady cross the road, except it's all in one and you can do them in any combination. So if I kill 3 creatures, pick up those rations and deliver them to someone, and then help one of the injured villagers that I'm sure are running around somewhere, I get progress from all of those. And once this bar is filled, the quest equivalent will auto-complete. I'll get a little pop-up here, which will have the reward, some experience, some gold, and karma, which is a currency that's used in various places in the game. And I don't have to interact with the NPC responsible at all. However, once the quest is complete, it can be worth interacting with them, as once you complete it, you unlock a special vendor option, and some of these have interesting unique items or skins that can be worth getting. The second way you'll interact with the world is through events. Events occur in real time, even without players around, so it's perfectly possible to walk into something that's happening as you move along. You can see here that there is a defeat the forged raiding party. So that event would progress even if I'm not here, and once that timer runs out, the event would be considered failed. And if it fails, there's a consequence. If it succeeds, there are rewards, or it starts another event, and that second event wouldn't have progressed if the event had failed. It might have diverged into a different pathway. And these events occur all over the world. They have different forms. There's that race that's popped up just now. Some of them are very small. They might just be a tiny escort quest or a kill 3 creatures. Others can be incredibly elaborate. They're taking back a series of fortifications, progressing the front lines of a battlefield, even the largest of which, known as world boss events, which spawn massive creatures that require more than 50 players to effectively combat, involve doing multiple mini events during them, and are on a larger timer of maybe about every 2 hours on different maps, where you'll always find players doing them. The final way of interacting with the world is through achievements. Achievements in this game aren't like the achievements in other games where you completely ignore them and they just pop up as you play along. Here, there are a wide range of activities, many of which you will never even realize exist unless you are looking at the achievement screen. There are jumping puzzles, massive, very ornate jumping puzzles that you might not be aware of on all the maps. It has the entire story quests for each part of the game, and within each of these story quests, it has a bunch of sub-achievements. Some of these require doing special things, finding hidden bosses and fighting them, defeating creatures in specific ways, like not getting killed or knocked down from a special attack, dodging all of a special attack, or not dodging all of a special attack. There are other categories, some for unlocking certain skins or clothing items, simpler ones such as killing X amount of a monster, the more complex ones like the jumping puzzles, world bosses, even hunting for treasure has its own sections. Each of the end game pieces of content also have their own pieces, so raids, PvP, World versus World, which is a large-scale Guild Wars 2 PvP where there's 3 faction sides, and they're at the moment based on your server, but they will eventually be switching to guild alliances, and it should be interesting to see how that goes going forward. And Fractals of the Mists, which is Guild Wars 2's answers to dungeons. Guild Wars 2 does have dungeons, 8 of them, but that content was decided not to be invested in going forward, and they've switched to doing Fractals in the Mists, which are their sort of escalating dungeon. It's a 5-man activity, and as you progress up higher levels, it gets progressively more and more difficult. There are unique debuffs, such as random explosions occurring, being unable to dodge as much, increased damage, things to keep it interesting, and for hardcore players to progress up and along. Number 3, a fresh take on the Holy Trinity and active combat. So nowadays, active combat is a fairly standard thing to see in an MMO, but back 9 years ago when Guild Wars 2 released, this was a fairly novel concept. Instead of just sitting there, hitting various buttons and waiting for the attack animation to go, hoping that you killed the enemy monster before it killed you, you can now actively participate in combat by dodging out of the way, walking out, using active damage mitigation such as shields, or transforming into mist so you can't be hit, or even just teleporting out of range of an attack. Each attack comes with indicators for its radius, and you know when you're going to be hit by an attack or when you're going to be hit by a beneficial buff, and you have to actively move around constantly. If you're standing still in combat, you're going to die in combat, especially if you're solo. In group content, there is a tactic known as stacking, which allows characters near you to give you their buffs as well, but we'll get into that at another time. So taking an active role in combat makes it feel much more engaging. There are several solo boss fights that get incredibly complex. Learning how to dodge and weave through certain patterns, what attacks you might be able to take, what attacks you definitely can't. Some of the interesting group content attacks are overlapping fields where certain players have to be standing together, other players want to be far away from each other, and you get punished if you can't fulfill those certain conditions. Another thing with the combat system is that your skills are linked to your weapon. So you can see I have a staff equipped, and I have 5 skills, 1 to 5 for the weapon. And if I swap to my sword, I now have a different set of skills with different ranges and different effects. You get to choose the other set of skills at any given time, depending on your class and race. The other aspect is the lack of a Holy Trinity. At the game's launch, there was absolutely no Holy Trinity at all. If you wanted to heal, you had to heal yourself. If you wanted to deal damage, you had to deal it yourself. If you wanted to tank, you had to find ways to either actively damage mitigate, summon minions or mobs that would tank the damage for you, or otherwise find a way to mitigate incoming sources of damage. This has changed a little in the 9 years since then. There is still no hard-locked Holy Trinity, but characters have gained specializations with the expansions. With specializations, new weapons are unlocked, and these new weapon subtypes are much more focused on certain things. So there are 1 or 2 that are much more focused on support, giving boons and removing debuffs. Another one is very focused on healing or providing support. They also have a unique skill that helps with resurrecting, and other ones have a lot of damage mitigation. There's still not a firm Holy Trinity, and any character can form any role. But in higher end content, such as Fractals or raids, players will kind of expect you to fulfill certain roles. While they might not be the standard tank, healer, DPS, they do perform specific functions in a similar manner, but that is more a consequence of the player base than game design. Number 4, freedom of movement. So there are 2 parts to this. One is freedom of movement within the game itself. If you can see, as I jump off this, I can deploy a glider, which allows me freeform movement in midair. I also have a mount, which I can fly around with, not indefinitely, but I can gain a certain amount of height and I can slowly glide down. I have freedom of movement. I can stop in midair, move side to side. There are various other mounts as well, each of which, unlike other games, performs a unique function. So there are some mounts that are better for vertical transformation or vertical ground covering, such as the Raptor. There are mounts that can jump incredibly high, like the Springer. There are mounts that can move over water. There are mounts that can interact with special portals to move across spaces and access areas you otherwise couldn't. And there are mounts that are used for racing. This mount is unique to World versus World, and it is the only mount you can use. And these last two mounts would be higher end mounts. These you will not get initially. They require some grind. They are very high end type endeavors, and new players will not access these for the first couple of 100 hours. Another aspect of this freedom of movement is the ability to teleport anywhere. Once you've been to a place once, you can instantly teleport for a small silver fee, which is negligible to any player, and you can be there as fast as the loading screen will go. What this means is that when you want to get to content, there's no delay. You can see an event is starting in 30 seconds and you can be there even if it's the far side of the world. They also have hubs. This is one of the main player cities, Lion's Arch, and as you can see from these portals, there is access to the Fractals of the Mists, access to raids. All of the raids are located in here. They do have their actual entrances elsewhere in the world, but for ease of access, you can just come here. There is access to World versus World, portals to different areas around there. There's also access to PvP. PvP can be accessed instantly from this menu here. You can queue up for it while doing other things. It's the same story for World versus World. You can instantly queue for any of the areas. That's if they do have queues. If you don't want to wait in a queue, they also have Edge of the Mists, which is a special overflow map that any amount of players can enter instantly, and it will just keep creating new copies so that you can still keep playing while you are waiting. I've played many other games where you'll spend 2 hours trying to maneuver your way to the content. In EVE Online, you will spend most of your time traveling. In World of Warcraft, you have to go on the Griffin routes, and some of those can take 15 minutes to get from one side to the other, by which time you may have lost some of the enthusiasm for doing the piece of content you wanted to. But here, you are straight in the action all the time. Number 5, character customization. So Guild Wars 2 has a wide range of character customization options. The first of this is the wide range of skins that are available. There are more than 6,000 skins in the game. I have about half of those unlocked even after 9 years, and there are many more out there that will be coming in with new expansions, releases of content, even a few at the cash shop as well. So you have a lot of options with that. And unlike other games, you are not locked into those skins being related to stats. We have the wardrobe here, which allows me to change the physical appearance of any piece of armor I have to any piece of armor I have unlocked on my account. Unlocking a skin is as simple as coming into possession of an item with that skin, then binding it to your account, or if you destroy the item, it will automatically unlock the skin, just so people don't get screwed over by accidentally destroying a skin that they wanted. That is, if you do it by salvaging, there is a way to intentionally screw yourself out of it. In addition to the wardrobe, which gives you a wide range of options, there are also the dyes. Each item has multiple dye channels, up to 4, which can be changed to a wide range of colors. The game has about 300, I think, different colors of dyes, and these different dyes cover the full spectrum. Some of them have interesting color effects, some of them are very dark tones or oversaturated, and there's a wide range of combinations in the billions or even trillions when you consider all of the different wardrobe skins that you can combine them with. It's also worth noting that these dyes interact differently with different fabrics. So for instance, if I try to dye the metallic part on these gloves, you will notice a sheen has appeared because it's a metal surface, whereas if I move it to the cloth, it's a more matte finish. And that as well opens up a whole other range of options where using different tones to get certain effects. So you can dye any piece of your armor, you can swap your weapon skins, you can also swap your back piece. The one thing I would note is that back pieces and weapons cannot be dyed. So weapon skins are very specific fixed items, as several tiers of weapons or unlocks as you advance are just recolors of the same weapon. And to enable this, you're not allowed to dye your weapons. This was also the case for back pieces for a lot of the time, but newer released back pieces now are coming with dye channels. This will not be retroactive for ones that have already been released though. So now that I've hopefully convinced you to play the game, I just want to give 5 small tips for new players, as these are pitfalls people can fall into. Number 1 is that you cannot change your race once you've created your character. You will be asked several questions in your character creation, and your answers to those have story effects. So the first few missions your character completes will change based on what answers you gave to those questions, and as they are different per each race, you cannot convert your character between the different races. Number 2 is it's definitely worth filling out all the character slots you have available. Guildwars 2 has yearly birthdays for each of your characters. Initially, the rewards from these birthdays aren't that big, but later on they are full armor sets, weapons sets. There's even a unique infusion, which is a cosmetic effect that can be applied over armor. And it's definitely worth having those. They come with cash shop items as well, which you can never have enough of. It's worth noting that your character's age is tied to your account age, so your oldest character is your account's age. If you delete that oldest character, your account's age will register as the next oldest created character. Some people have been called out by this because they've deleted a character they've had for years and all their other characters were created a week ago, and then they don't get their birthday rewards for several years. So whichever character you create first, it's definitely worth just keeping that one. Number 3 is don't waste your transmutation charges when leveling up. The game's cosmetic system, as I mentioned, is through the wardrobe. The wardrobe, however, does cost transmutation charges. These are technically cash shop items, but the game will throw a lot of them at you over time. As you can see, I have 14 characters, but I have more than 300 of the charges, and it's always 1 charge per piece, except for legendary equipment where there are no charges for changing to any skin, which is another perk of them. As you're leveling up, you will get a few of these, and it can be tempting to change each of the skins as you're leveling, but because you'll be swapping through armor pieces so fast, you will burn through your transmutation charges and then feel like you have none left once you hit level 80. So until then, when you're in leveling armor, it's best just to mess with the dyes and not bother transmuting them. If you don't waste them before level 80, you'll be fine and never have to buy them when you are level 80. The majority of the transmutation charges come from World vs. World and PvP. They have a much higher drop rate there, but you also get them from daily logins, reward chests in certain instances, and for map completion at certain times. Tip number 5 would be not to waste in-game currencies. So each currency in the game, of which there is a long list, can be converted in some manner into gold. Gold, or coins, is going to be the most tricky currency to amass a lot of. It's usually the one players struggle with, and there is a temptation to convert your other currencies into it, even though the rate can be very poor at times, and I would recommend not doing this. The other currencies unlock unique rewards, and that's the only way to obtain them. So if you convert several of your currencies to gold, you then have to repeatedly grind out some of the other currencies, which can be a pain because you've already completed the content. And the first time you do content, there's usually extra rewards as you do some of the achievements. It unlocks other rewards and titles. So if you've done all of those and then you're coming back to an area to grind it out, it's going to be a slow and arduous process. The content isn't new to you and it'll be much less fun. Of particular note is an item that isn't in your coin wallet, but that you get for logging in, and that is mystic coins. Mystic coins are worth a lot on the player trading post, and it can be very tempting as a new player to sell these. I would strongly recommend you don't. They are used towards making legendary weapons and armor. And they're also used towards certain other armor skins and 1 or 2 collections. And weapon skins, actually. And as a new player, it can be very tempting to get an influx of gold by selling these, but they're a time-gated currency, and acquiring enough of them for a legendary is one of the biggest pains in the ass of making a legendary. So definitely worth hanging on to those. Thanks for listening, and I hope this has inspired you to give the game a try. I will probably have a guide on how to properly gear up your character at another point. Other than that, just log in, have fun. You don't need to complete everything on a map, just do enough to get to a level you're happy with and follow the story to your heart's content. If you've enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe, and if you have anything in particular you would like to see me do, just let me know and I might be able to make content on that. Thank you everyone, and have a nice day.